My name is Anna Swartz. I'm the School of Management Alumni Liaison. Today we have 3 alumni panelists here to answer questions about college and career experience. I'll start with the panel introducing themselves. Laura, will go with you. If you could give us your name, education background, job title, and company.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us. So my name is Laura Bell. I graduated in 2016 in the spring with a bachelor's in accounting and a minor in Spanish. I currently work for Lewis & Knopf as a staff accountant.
Great, thanks. Mike?
Hi, I'm Mike Torrey. I graduated way back in 1982 with a bachelor's degree in accounting, and I'm currently the Vice President of Rates and Regulation for Consumers Energy.
Thanks. Jennifer?
I'm Jennifer Flagel. I graduated in 1997 with a bachelor in marketing and an MBA. And I have been consulting for a number of years, but am currently working as Director of Graduate Admission at Bentley University up in the Boston area.
Thanks. We'll start with you, Jennifer, since you just finished. Do you have any advice you would like to provide students as they approach graduation and prepare for future careers?
I think that my answer to that will change now compared with what it might have been even a year ago or certainly earlier in my career. But I think just being really open-minded is important, and considering every opportunity for what you might be exposed to, not just what the title is or what the salary is, but really about the people you're going to be working with, who you can learn from, who you can develop networks with and relationships with. And that can be really valuable later in your career, to sometimes taking a job that doesn't seem like it's that exciting right away, but really establishes you on a strong path, can reap rewards later.
Okay, great. Mike, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'd say to be tough and to be resilient during these challenging times with the pandemic here and economic downturn. We're not sure how it's going to play out. And if you're looking for a job now or in the next several months, maybe the next year, that's going to be different than it was, 6 or 8 months ago. So be tough, be resilient. Jennifer mentioned a network, and that's really important. I think you should stay in touch with as many people in as many different areas of interest as you might have, and be open to trying different things, maybe a little bit removed from your immediate field of interest or, what you majored in school. And, identify what makes you different from everybody else. There are a lot of people out there looking for work, and why you? Why should someone hire you? And that's different for everybody. So I can't tell you what that is for you, but you can figure it out. And that's what's really important. And just be tough and be resilient.
Laura?
Sure. I'd like to piggyback off of what Jennifer and Michael said, and say that, have confidence in yourself, be willing to do those internships, look around for different jobs, and really build on any connections you may have, because it'll help you to propel yourself and prepare yourself into the field that you're looking to get into and will ultimately have a career in.
Great, thanks. What are some helpful resources you guys use on campus when you were undergrad or graduates? We'll go with Laura first.
Sure. I would say that the career fairs were excellent for me. I actually got, initially gave my resume to Lewis & Knopf at the career fair in March. So that was very helpful. And I also found that not just the advisors, but your business professors, in my case, one of my accounting professors, was much more of a resource than I imagined, not just asking a question with classes, but saying, hey, what do I need to do to get the CPA exam? I don't think my classes are lining up right now. And so she was one of the professors, Dr. Miller, was able to help me get in the right direction with that.
Great. Mike?
Sure. I worked on building my network, before I graduated. When I knew I wanted to major in accounting, I would talk to friends and neighbors and family members and my fellow students, family members that, you know, were working in accounting positions, and I'd ask to just, you know, talk to them about what might be available and what kind of work they did, what was involved. And, you know, when you talk about accounting or finance or any one of the disciplines covered by the School of Management there at UM-Flint, there's a wide diversity of the types of jobs and the roles and responsibilities and the career paths. So, you know, you just need to be aware, create an awareness of what's out there and find something that you're interested in, and, you know, learn as much as you can about it. So when you walk into that first interview, or maybe it's a telephone or a Zoom interview, you can be well informed and ask intelligent questions to the person that you want to hire you. So I worked on a network really, and I had a lot of advice on how to do that from the placement office at the time. And career fairs were okay. I was awed by the first one when I walked into the USEN, and I'm like, wow, this is, you know, I'm like, man, maybe I should take a look at something else other than accounting or finance where my interest was, because some of the people that were there from large manufacturers and stuff, I was fascinated by the story they were telling. So get out there and wander around and expose yourself to as many different things that, you know, and you'll find something that you're interested in, and that'll drive your, you know, your first job, and might not be your last one, but you know, you might find something that first job. I've been here at Consumers Energy for 37 years, and I wouldn't trade my experience for anything else. So.
Great. Jennifer?
So I'm a little ashamed to say I did not use any of the standard career services. I never went to a career fair. And I think a lot of that was just because it was very much out of my comfort zone to be in that environment. And so I relied a lot more on network skills. And I think my campus jobs were really the number one thing that helped develop confidence and to help get to know how to talk to people, how to approach people, how to market my skills and experiences that I had. And also through just my class networks, I got a lot of internships. I had a lot of interests and I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to pursue. I was double majoring at one point in communications, then I switched to HR, and it was like I just wanted everything. So being able to do some internships in each of those, focused in each of those areas. And I had a lot of, as Laura mentioned, the faculty were a huge asset to me, and being able to work on special projects that exposed me to different concepts and careers. And ultimately, I think, you know, my career choice wasn't something I had ever actually envisioned. It never occurred to me that information systems might be a career in of itself. I knew I didn't like computer programming, but I didn't understand kind of the realm of analytics and database systems. And I think, you know, just getting more exposure to that and then finding opportunities in conversations with faculty to help them on their research projects or to kind of dabble in those areas and get exposure really helped.
Nice. I had the same experience. I didn't really get involved on campus till I got a college job, and I'm totally introverted. So that definitely had to pull me out of my comfort zone and meet a lot of faculty, staff, students. But that's how I kind of had to get out of my shell with my job. Mike, we'll start with you next. How did UM-Flint help you prepare for your job in your field?
You know, I would say that my accounting education is second to none. I was well prepared for my first accounting job, an entry-level accounting position with Consumers Energy at a nuclear power plant over on the west side of the state. So it was an awesome place to be, but I was not afraid of anything that they wanted to throw at me. I was very confident, and that led my boss, the plant controller, to give me more challenging assignments and prepared me for success and eventually into a leadership track. And so I came out of school with a rock solid education in accounting, and have, you know, was able to apply it on day one. So I'm very thankful for that. And you know, I was also interested in operations management, and through my entire career, we've spent a lot of time on, you know, identifying unit costs and applying lean business principles and trying to keep our costs as low as they possibly can be. And so I was fascinated by that. I originally started school in Ann Arbor. I thought that maybe I wanted to be a doctor someday, and took all kinds of science classes. And I got a summer job working at the truck plant at Flint Assembly, building pickups and Blazers and Suburbans, and continued to go to school at U-Flint. And it was a good way to pay for school, working while I was going to school. And the next thing you know, it's like my degree, I'm fascinated by how do you make money making trucks. And that led me to accounting and finance courses in the School of Management. And I'll say the rest is history. But I made a change after a couple of years in Ann Arbor, and came back to my hometown and finished up school there, and was glad that I did. Again, no regrets. So.
Great. Laura?
Sure. So I would agree that the accounting curriculum is very strong and prepared me for my career. Particularly, I know the audit class that I took, I felt like I could have taken the CPA exam. Now that I've taken it, already taken it, I feel like I could have taken it right after I graduated because of everything I learned in that class. So that was very helpful for me. Michael mentioned operations management, and that was a class I really enjoyed during college. I was working for a local firm, a smaller firm, and for one of my projects, I had to do, come up with different ideas with operations, and my boss allowed me to use his firm as the guinea pig, and we implemented the changes that I gave him as an idea for my project. So things like that and putting it into practice were really helpful.
Great. Jennifer?
So again, I think, a lot of echoing what they said. Maybe the different spin that I could also offer is just being a small campus within the context of a very large institution gives you both the benefits of all the resources that the University of Michigan has to offer and that small kind of family-oriented feel of the Flint campus. So while certainly at the time I was there, UM-Flint was just a commuter school, it never felt like that to me, because through my campus jobs, through my relationships with classmates, it felt very much like home to me. I moved to an apartment near campus and really kind of tried to immerse myself in everything that UM-Flint had to offer. And that made a huge difference to really kind of like changing my address literally to Flint, and, really feeling like part of the community, participating in what was happening in the community, the 4th of July festivals, I wish back to the bricks. I'd been there when I was a student. I think I would have absolutely loved that. And it's been on my to-do list for many years to get to. But just things like that, where you really, you never know when you meet somebody how they may factor into your life down the road. And I think it created an environment that was very open to forming relationships, and not assuming that every person that you meet is going to be in a similar career path as what you're on track. But, the people I was in even my management courses with, or my business courses, are doing all kinds of things across the US now, and some of them even overseas. And so, thinking back to, I think I took econ with this person. Let me see what they're doing now. I just felt like that was something kind of unique about the Flint experience. You really get a chance to connect with people who are outside of your immediate major field interest network.
Great. We have a question from a student, Alexis. Okay, it's a little bit of few questions. We'll start with Mike. Did you use your professors as a resource? If so, did you go to them for letters of recommendation or for networking? What do you think is appropriate to ask them when trying to network to find an interview, an internship, a job? So it's in the chat if you want to read it too, but I guess it would be like, when you were in college, did you use your professors as resources? Do you still reach out to them?
Yes, and when I was a freshman and sophomore on campus in Ann Arbor, I found it extremely difficult to connect with professors. A lot of teaching assistants in large sections, and So when I started at U-of-M-Flint, my junior year in the School of Management, it was very easy to connect with professors. And so I talked especially to my accounting professors and all the time. And I believe a couple of them I used for letters of recommendation when I was out there looking for jobs my senior year. And I wouldn't, ask them at their, I found most of the staff at U-of-M-Flint open to talking about whatever you want to talk about and the most helpful. And so I wouldn't hesitate to ask your professors. But, before you get around to asking, get to know them. When you're a junior, and don't wait until your last semester and you're out there and you want to ask a professor for something. Establish that relationship back and, as soon as you can, and get to know them, and they're a tremendous resource and can provide advice. And because they have, every year are seeing a new group of students come through, and if they're talking to them, then they can provide you a wealth of knowledge and guidance. And, I'm sure a lot of things that you're encountering, they've heard before from students and can set you on the right track. So I would not hesitate to engage professors at U-of-M-Flint. It was awesome when I did that, and I love doing that, and I had trouble doing that when I was on campus in November. So.
Jennifer?
So I would reiterate what Mike said about don't make the recommendation request your first interaction with the faculty. Definitely, you can learn a lot about them just in terms of what they talk about in their classes. A lot of times they're talking about professional work that they did previously, and you don't have to get to know every professor that you have on a personal level, but when you hear them talk about something that you have an interest in, that's a great opportunity to follow up and say, hey, you were talking about this project that you had worked on, and that sounded really interesting to me. Can you tell me more? And that's a great way to start that relationship. And then when you have that relationship, they're more likely to think of you when they have opportunities for special projects or internships or what have you, that to be able to come to the forefront of mind. The more specific you can build that relationship around a project or something beyond just the typical coursework, the better they're able to speak to that in writing you a recommendation. And then when you go back to them for a recommendation, what I always ask my students to when they're asking me for recommendations is to send me your current resume so that I have that kind of frame of reference and the description of the job that you're applying to, and give me a few bullets about what you want me to highlight in terms of our relationship and the work that I'm familiar with, because you're going to know best from your research with the company and the position what's important to them, and then I can speak to that and really help you to highlight your skills.
All right. Yeah, I would agree with what both Jennifer and Michael said. I would say, I mentioned that I had talked with one professor about my classes. I talked with another one kind of about, hey, I know I need 150 credits. Should I get my master's? Should I do it on my bachelor's? At that point, I had kind of already started down the path, and because I was at the end, and he's like, why did you do this? But, talking with different professors and different individuals, they're going to have their perspectives. And it worked for me, what I ended up doing. But I would say the most connection that I gained with a professor was with my auditing professor, Roz Novachelski. She was there during the time I was a student, and we kept in touch after. She was checking up on me as I was studying for the CPA exam. And it was really encouraging to have a CPA that's seasoned, that could really kind of know where I was in my shoes and help push me along. And we met for lunch, things like that. And it's just been a great resource to have, post-college even.
Thank you. Jennifer, we'll start with you. If you could go back to college, what would you do differently?
I kind of feel like I never really left college, but I would say the biggest thing for me, there's very little I would change, because I absolutely loved my time at UM-Flint and would be happy to repeat it, even if it wasn't exactly the same way. I think the one thing I would do differently is maybe lower my expectations of myself in that, particularly that first year. I feel like, in reflecting back, I was really super stressed that first year and probably didn't take as much advantage of the things available to me right away. So it took me a while to kind of come out of my shell and feel like, okay, I understand how to balance classes. And I was all about, let me get this degree done as fast as I can. I had 21 credits in my first semester. I had 19 in my second semester. And I just about, crashed and burned after that first year. So I think, just having a better, more balanced understanding of college and how to approach the college experience now that I know better.
Yeah. Mike?
I would have probably slowed down just a little bit. I too was in a hurry to graduate. Once I changed my major and realized that I was behind, I said, well, I need to catch up. And so I'd take 5 or 6 classes a semester, and I worked full time most of that time. And so I worked, a night shift at the truck plant, and during breaks and lunch and whatever, I was doing my classwork, and then I was going to school all day. And sometimes I was able to sleep and find time to do that. So I would have slowed down just a little bit, but it was fun. I wouldn't trade my experience working on the assembly line at Flint Assembly for anything. And I enjoyed the 2.5 years that I spent at UM-Flint. And so I'm not sure I would change anything other than maybe drag it out a little bit and have some more time to enjoy student life, which, I did an awful lot of that in my freshman and sophomore year in Ann Arbor. So I was on a mission once I came back to Flint, and I said, you know what, I know what I want to do, and let's get on with it and get school behind me. And so that's it.
Laura?
All right. I would say, if I could go back, when I think about studying for the CP exam after whatever it is that in your field for business that you're looking to do, if I could have, I did enough to do well in school, but to do that extra to really remember it even further across, the financial accounting and reporting, I think in the type of classes that would have prepared me for that exam, if I did a little more than just to really get my A or whatever, but take that extra time and slow down as they both said already, just to get a further depth. And another thing I'd like to say is I wish I was more involved. I know Jennifer mentioned not being too involved, I think, with, on campus. I think for me, I was so incredibly involved in high school. I was involved in everything. Then I got to college and I'm like, I'm coasting. I'm here for class. I'm leaving. I'm going to work, and I didn't join Beta Alpha Psi until my last year of college, thinking about my resume. And it's like, what could I have gained had I joined that when I got into my business classes, second or third year. So.
Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start with Mike. What are some do's and don'ts of resumes and job interviewing?
I would say that that you definitely need to be prepared and come in informed about the business, the company, the industry that you're talking to, so that you can ask intelligent questions and be interested and find out from the interviewer what's important to them, and let them know that you're kind of plugged into that because you're have done a little bit of research before you walk in there. I don't know that there's any hard and fast don'ts. And people are, when I talk to people, I try to determine, is this like their first interview, or have they been out there changing jobs every couple of years, and so they're a pro at interviews. And so I give folks a little grace if it's their first interview or second interview, or they've just graduated 2 weeks ago or whatever. So I don't like to say there are no don'ts, but we'll let the conversation, I like to have just conversations with people and try to figure out what makes them tick, what they're passionate about. And you know, if they had an opportunity through working for me to make the world a better place, what would that look like? And so that's the kinds of back and forth that I like to do. But I'm not, you know, generally a hiring manager. Hiring managers are working for me, and they've said, hey, Mike, here's our 2 or 3 best candidates. We'd like you to talk to them. And so I talk to them, and that's my approach these days. Maybe I was a tougher interviewer, you know, 20 or 30 years ago, but I'm a conversationalist now. So,
Laura?
I like what Michael said about be ready to ask intelligent questions. I'm also not at the hiring point. I have participated in the career fairs to just stand and answer questions about our firm and take resumes. And then we can kind of write notes on what to give our firm administrator. But I know for me, when I went into my interview, I was looking on, you know, their website ahead of time, learning, hey, is this their only location? Do they have 3? You know, just so that I knew a little bit of what I was getting into, and think about the kind of questions that you'd like to ask them, you know, that are, you know, to see if it's a good fit for you too. It takes both ends to kind of evaluate for it to work out, in my opinion.
Jennifer?
So I think for me, the biggest advice would be in terms of when you're writing your resume, and, you know, maybe they don't ask for a cover letter, include one anyway. I find the cover letter often is more important than the resume. But I think, you know, it's a chance to attempt to make some kind of personal connection or demonstrate why you're interested in this particular job, business. A cover letter or a resume is going to look probably the same to the dozen or so, you know, places that you're sending it to, but the cover letter is your chance to make a connection with the employer and to say, here's what I really liked about this opportunity and why I think that I'm the right person for you. And I think it's really important to highlight kind of what's in it for them, not just what's in it for you, because I get a lot that say how great I am, but no acknowledgement of where they're applying to or what the job is or why they want to, especially if it's something where you're making a switch that's kind of a leap, or you know, it like where an employer might question just why are they applying for this? That's kind of, it seems like an odd. Address it, you know, like you don't have to say, oh, you know, I've been stuck home with my kids for the last 1.5 years during COVID, and so now I'm looking for, you know, it doesn't have to be that personal. It's just more, you know, you have to kind of find a way, and this is where talking with faculty members, talking with career services is great at helping you try to, you know, kind of frame your background and experience. And then in terms of the interview itself, definitely just as Michael said, you know, I'm very much conversational, but again, you know, I'm looking for why are you interested and how do you think you can contribute to the work that we're trying to do? So if you come prepared and you know what the frame of reference is, what some of the challenges we might be facing, and then have just 2 or 3 examples from your personal experience that you want to tell a story about. You can answer almost any question with 2 or 3 stories and frame them to answer what it is they're asking about, whether they're asking about a challenge you faced and how you overcame it, or what you know, like least or best. You can reference back to those 2 or 3 stories and figure out some example. And so if you're well prepared with those 2 or 3, you're going to have a good conversational interview that doesn't sound canned.
We have a question from Antonio. Can you describe your hiring process? How many interviews did you have to complete before being hired? How long did the hiring process take? Mike, do you want to start with that, with your experience?
Yeah, sure. At the same time I was applying and going through the process at Consumers Energy, I really wanted to be an FBI agent, and I'm not, because their hiring process is ridiculously drawn out. I mean, I had an interview at their Detroit office. I took an accounting exam a couple months later at their Detroit office. I went to a panel interview a couple months later, and so this dragged out, like it was just crazy long, and it started before I graduated and continued. And when I connected with Consumers Energy, which I did through a network because my best friend in high school's mother worked at the company's Flint office, and at one time had worked for the region controller, and she's like, we hire accountants all the time, you know, she go talk to us. So I did, and that process from start to finish was probably less than 2 months, a few weeks from an initial interview and a second interview and a job offer, and so it was really quick, and it was because of just my friend's mother worked for the region controller at the Flint office there on Court Street, and so you know, whereas the federal government was this long, crazy process. But you know, I want to point out something too, that we're talking about resumes here, and a number of large corporations, you know, take input in resumes that you submit electronically, and those get run through what I'll call an AI program. Okay, and so the first pass isn't even a human being; it is, you know, somebody developed a program that looks for keywords, and they take hundreds or thousands of resumes and filter the first passes down to you know, something that's manageable, and a human being didn't do that. So you need to not only have something that'll make yours stand out, but also know somebody on the inside that can say, hey, I'd like to see so-and-so's resume, okay? Because otherwise you're gonna get lost in you know, the great, we receive just a ton of resumes through our website, career opportunities. You can go out there, and sometimes there's more than 100 jobs posted at consumers, and it is a very efficient process, but it's very automated, and the first cut is not really oriented towards somebody that's going to look like everybody else. You know, so you need to have something that makes you stand out, and knowing somebody on the inside is a big help.
Great, thanks for that insight. Jennifer?
I was so intrigued with Mike's response that I forgot the actual question.
Can you describe your hiring process at your position? How many interviews did you have to go through?
Yes.
How long did the hiring process take?
Yeah, so going back to his first point, I think it really depends on the industry, and you should know your industry and know what to expect. In higher ed, things do not move fast. And I would say nonprofit in general. I was once in a search at a children's hospital that went on for probably 5 months. And I had at least 5 interviews with over 20 people in total. And so, you know, really know the industry and know what to expect. And the best time to look for a job is when you already have one. So, you know, that first job may be more about, you know, just kind of expediency and great. And, you know, there may just be an expectation that, you know, it's a 1 year, 2 year job, but it gives you a good experience, a good kind of starting platform for what might come next. And then you've got more time to look for the second one. But you know the market. Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market that you're in at that point in time? And what is the industry like, so that you know what to expect? And then absolutely knowing somebody. And LinkedIn is great for that, and being able to see the number of connections, like, oh, I'm a third connection to somebody at the place I want. Who do I know in between, and how can I get in touch with somebody there, has been just totally different, you know, game changer from when I was going through this process right out of school.
Laura?
All right. So for me, so I went to that career fair in March, and the only reason why I was looking for Lewis and Knopf particularly is because one of my aunts told me she knew someone that was a partner there or worked there. I don't think she knew where he was at in the ranking. He's the managing partner. But I was like, okay, I'll look into it. And I didn't really know when I looked at the different firms online, how big they were, how they were going to compare to the one I was already working at. You know, was it going to be a jump? Was it comparable? So I went there. You know, Plant Moran and other firms are normally there as well. Then I'd say it probably was a month and a half before I actually got the email to have an interview. When I came to the interview, it was with 2 partners, I want to say, and the firm administrator. So 3 people total. And then maybe a couple more weeks or so before. I didn't actually start until July. So if you figure from March to July, that's kind of what happened with the timeline. But I know, like what Jennifer said with having connections on LinkedIn, things like that. I have someone I went to school with, high school, that I hadn't talked to since high school, that was connected with me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I noticed you worked here. And, you know, I put in my good word for her, and she ended up transferring from a different firm to work for us last year. So I really know that, you know, the hiring personnel value having those connections, and it's a little more than just a name on a paper or another resume. They have someone they can say, okay, you know, they were a good student, you know, that they have high ethics and are going to try to do their best, and they value that.
Thank you. We'll start with you, Jennifer. How do you practice work-life balance?
I practice a lot. I'm not sure how well I execute. It's definitely something that I have struggled with my whole career, because when I get involved, I love what I do. And so the lines blur between job and entertainment at some point. So I think, you know, really in particularly today's age where every device is telling me every time I have an email or a text or something, it can be difficult to manage that. So I try to set expectations with my team that, you know, look, you're only expected to be on during your shift. If you happen to see something and you feel compelled to respond later, that's up to you. I try to schedule I do a lot of work in the evenings when things are quiet and I don't have meetings, but I try to use the tools, like for instance, we use Outlook. I schedule my email to not send until 8:30 a.m. so that it's done and it's off my plate, but I'm not filling up other people's inboxes in the middle of the night. I, you know, try to monitor but not necessarily respond outside of business hours, so that, you know, we kind of all can help each other maintain that work-life balance. And then I think what's been interesting in the last 6 months or so has been definitely an upset of standard work hours, because a lot of people are juggling family at home, kids at home, disruptions from pets or spouses who are trying to work in the same environment, or students who are cohabitating and they're on different schedules and they're trying to figure that all out. So just being really creative about how we get the work done, and when does it have to happen now? Can it happen some other time? Does this really require a meeting, or can we handle it offline? Has been just kind of a new challenge. So yeah, and definitely encouraging people to take breaks throughout the day, go for a walk, and then sticking to that myself. So not just telling people to do it and then ignoring it myself, but actually following along with that. And so scheduling hey, we haven't caught up in a while, let's just have a personal chat while we go out and walk for 15 minutes in the afternoon, sometimes is helpful.
Thanks. Mike?
I would say prior to the pandemic, I was like a failure at work-life balance. I'm totally engrossed in my work, and but I'm in a different place. My kids are through college and they're not living at home. And when my son played high school tennis, for 4 years in the fall on Thursday afternoons, I'd walk out of the office at 3:30 and go sit on the bleachers and watch him play, and it was the most relaxing, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. But we'd go home and have dinner afterwards, and I'd open up my laptop and make up for the fact that I left my office a couple of hours early. So, and I still do that. And I try to accommodate my team members. For instance, we've got, projections of a windstorm coming through Michigan here, and we have people that are on call, and I have some folks that are off this week because there's a holiday tomorrow. And so I volunteered for a storm roll that I don't normally do, but I'm willing to do that because my team wants to do something else, and they should be able to do that. So, and we're all, work-life balance is different for everybody. People with newborns and babies, and people with elementary school kids that are, at home, virtual schooling right now, and then my personal situation. Everybody's different. I've found a silver lining in the pandemic in that my 45-minute commute, each way, an hour and a half, is now free. And so I get up and I'm outside every morning about 5:30, and I'm running or walking the neighborhood, and I've taken the coolest pictures when the sun's coming up, and I use them as backgrounds sometimes. And so, it's worked really well for me. And we call each other on our indiscretions when it comes to work-life balance, and we're not where we should be. And it gets pointed out to me where I'm like crazy and need to just stop and put it away for a while and think about it tomorrow. But I do that to my team too. So we have checks and balances, and I'll pitch in to get everything done and have fun. Work is fun, and that's why it's, we're able to do it as much as we do, to let it fill up the day as much as we do. So.
Laura?
All right. For me, I'd say this is something that I've struggled with, but I've really tried to draw some lines to divide. I'm in that point of life where I have a toddler and I'm expecting another one in March. So I have that young family that I really need to be there for. And working in the firm life, our workload is very deadline driven. As we're approaching our tax deadlines, extended deadlines, there's a lot of hours expected. So one thing that the firm offers is flex time. I take advantage of that. If I can go in a little later and have that morning with my daughter, drop her off a little later, but then I need to stay later, especially if I have the workload. And they don't care as long as I'm getting my work done. And there are times that, when we have audit season in the summer, we also have our extended deadlines that are overlapping. And the last couple of weeks, I end up going back to the office, and I kind of try to have that balance with the times we're not as busy with, even they close offices on Fridays, or people will leave early on Fridays. And I try to take advantage of those to kind of recoup the time that I missed out at different times. And it helps that my husband has been on board with helping and being willing to drop off and pick up when I'm like, hey, I have to be at the client at 7. I don't know what time I'm going to leave. This is a busy week. So we kind of have to work together on that.
Thank you. We have another question from Antonio. Mike, we'll start with you. Do you have any professional failures you would like to share and how you overcame those failures? And if so, did the employer offer any support resources?
My work is both challenging and rewarding. Sometimes we ask the regulator, the Michigan Public Service Commission, for something and they say no. And that's, after several months and, many people putting in hundreds, if not thousands of hours into a project or a program, and they tell us no, okay? It's can be disappointing, but when they tell us yes, it is very rewarding. And so the occasional no and the occasional disappointment, we don't get too upset about that. We learn from, what we could do differently, and we move on. And so I have a team that is, like I mentioned at the onset here of our discussion, that they're resilient, and they're willing to take a few in the loss column because they have so many wins that are out there and more to look forward to. So we don't get too wrapped up. We do, an after action review and figure out, hey, what could we do different this time? And we learn from it and we move on, and we're supportive of each other. Nobody is not really viewed as a personal loss when projects or programs get shut down or rejected. It is a collective effort, and just use it as a learning experience.
Jennifer?
I don't really have anything to add to that. I think I've been really fortunate to always work for supervisors who had that same approach, that, it's a learning experience and, figuring out kind of doing that postmortem, assessment of, well, why did it fail and could we have done something differently? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes it's, as soon as it happened, what could have gone differently or where things went wrong. But just, being able to not let it drag you down. I love to watch college basketball, and I often think of this when I see teams who they have one kind of upsetting incident and then things start to crumble and they stop working together and they start to question themselves, and then the whole game kind of unravels. And I think, just really being able to not let it impact what's going to happen next in terms of moving forward, getting past it, learning from it, and just kind of moving on.
Laura?
For me, as far as professional failures, I'd say passing my CP exam. The passing rates are not, they're very high, and I knew that going in. I set my mind that I was going to pass. You know, and I thought, of course, I'm not going to be one that fails an exam. I'm going to get through it by the first time. That didn't happen. Out of the 4, I think there was 2 of them that I did not pass. One of them I was pregnant during the time, and I was not being, the study materials were not keeping me up at night. I was falling asleep. So that was kind of expected, but then the timer, you know, set, especially because, man, I passed 2 of them and I've got a baby coming. I've only got so much more time. So it was a really difficult season, and I was at Lewis and Knopf the whole time. So they were very supportive. They were in my corner. Sometimes I didn't want them asking me, how's your studying going? Or did you get your score yet? When is the score? I didn't want anyone to know. I just wanted to have my my time to kind of go through it, but it did help me to kind of go through. And when it came to my last few months of when my 18 months would come, they were more supportive of, hey, we know it's tax season. We know typically you'd be working a lot of hours. We also know you have a newborn and you have 2 exams to pass. So it, you know, that balance was there, and they helped me through it. And ultimately, I did not get it in the 18 months. My last score that I should have been done was 1 point shy of what I needed. So I just set my mind to pass it within the next 6 months. And I did, thankfully, that by the end of the year, I passed. So it taught me a lot in that season. Things don't always go as planned. You're not a product of just your failures, and you can overcome them. And they can be some of your biggest challenges to overcome, and it can encourage others.
Thank you. Jennifer, we'll start with you. Can you describe your typical day at work?
At this point, a lot of Zoom meetings. But before that, what I really like about pretty much every job what attracts me to a position is the ability to have a lot of variation in my day and in my duties. So I like to have a mix of being able to connect with my team members and have some time to work on more strategic projects, and also have some time where I get to meet with essentially the client, who in most cases is the student, and really kind of connect with, you know, why we're doing what we're doing and how we can make things better. So unfortunately, most of my time ends up being very reactionary at this point, which is not typical. I prefer when it's more strategic and forward thinking than reacting to things that have happened. But there's just a lot of people, I think, who are in a reactionary mode right now, and it creates kind of a ripple effect. So being flexible is key, I think, in any position right now. But normally, I would say it's a lot more desk work than I ever imagined myself doing. Even when I'm on campus, it was a lot of desk work. But I like that I like working with students. So I like that my job continues to have interaction with the students and reminding me why we do what we do.
Mike?
Sure. I have pretty structured early part of my workday. We have operating reviews at my level where my direct reports get together for 15 or 20 minutes every morning to talk about our plans for the day and how we did the day before, and if there's any gaps that we need to close. We do the same thing at my immediate supervisor, senior vice president's level, and then I spend a lot of time coaching and connecting with my team. I do one-on-ones with my direct reports every week, and then with all of my team, I have about 30 people in my organization, and I try to meet with them 2 or 3 times a year, totally unstructured. They can bring in whatever they want. They can talk about their work. They can talk about something that's going on outside of work, and just see where that goes. And just a way to stay connected. And of course, all that's virtually now. We've been working from home, just like everybody else. And we might continue to do that. So, you know, I don't feel any disconnected at all from my team. Our virtual environment has worked really well for us. So much so that, you know, we might decide to leave our offices behind permanently, and a number of office workers are going to be able to elect to work from home on a permanent basis, even after the pandemic is over. And a lot of people have said that's pretty cool, and the company is going to give us the opportunity to change our minds and go back if we want to at some point, based on our personal situation. So things have gone really well, and my days look a lot like they did when we were in the office, only it's sitting here in front of this small screen. What I miss the most is the laughter and the interpersonal interaction. We still laugh a lot, but it's not the same as if you're 2 or 3 people standing in somebody's office and laughing as it is over the screen here. So a lot of discussions, a lot of one-on-ones, and it's worked really well in the virtual environment.
Laura?
For me, I would say that my work-life, my work-life balance, I was going to go back a couple of questions. My daily routine for work for the most of the year is kind of going in as I see fit, kind of balancing my hours and managing the workload that I have on my desk. And, you know, I'm getting work from different angles. I might have audits that need to be finished up. I might have tax returns. And I need to ask the partners, you know, when do you want this finished by, so that I can prioritize what to work on first, and that's on me. So I do enjoy the variety. There are a couple of months in the summer when we're doing our school audits that there's probably an 8-week stretch I'm not in the office. I'm not scheduled in the office. So that becomes a little trickier. My schedule is based on when we're supposed to be at the clients. We're meeting at 8, we're meeting at 7, and whenever we all leave. And it becomes a little busier then because the things on my desk are still there. So I kind of have to manage if I need to work more to kind of keep up with things.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think we all are working fairly traditional jobs right now on this panel, but in my years consulting, I was partly doing it because my son was young and I wanted to spend more time with him and kind of working around his schedule. But what I learned from that experience is when you're consulting, your schedule is not yours. Your schedule belongs to the client. And, you know, to Laura's point, you're kind of, you build your work around what the client's needs are and what's happening at that time. And at some point, I tended to do a lot of long-term contracts with a client, and it would often create a position because a vacancy would come up, and then I would kind of do the vacancy for a while and then help them hire and then move into something else. So there was a lot of back and forth where sometimes I'd be on a regular schedule, sometimes I'd be home, and it was disruptive. But what I hated most was tax season, when I'd have to do my own tax and reporting, and it was just so complicated as a contractor to have to deal with all that. And so, you know, it was kind of refreshing to go back to just a regular job and a single employer and not have to think about all those things for a while. So there's definitely things to consider versus if you're evaluating self-employment versus a traditional employer model.
Great. Mike, I'll start with you on this question. Do you have any advice for those trying to use a business degree in a non-traditional way? Did you find that certain skills you learned were universal?
Yeah, and when it comes to school of management, you know, employees, I would say that, you know, every large corporation has accounting, finance, marketing, and so there are ways to, you know, Consumers Energy is predominantly, you know, engineers. The majority of our employees are engineers and operators, but we have, you know, a significant number of support people like myself. And I never would have dreamed of working at a nuclear power plant right after I graduated from college. And it was pretty cool. I mean, there was 800 people there, and 3 of them were accountants, and I was glad to be one of them. And so don't just put yourself in a box. The box is in your head, and think about, things that need to be accounted for or financed or marketed or whatever it is that you're interested in. And just about every large corporation or business needs somebody that does what you have just earned your degree in. So, when people try to limit themselves, it is just in their head, and they should be aware that there are opportunities out there in non-traditional areas, and go for it. And one thing will lead to another, and the next thing you know, you'll be looking back on a 40+ year career saying, man, this was an awesome ride. Hey.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I agree. I think the skills that I learned are completely adaptable to pretty much anything. And I think part of that value is the fact that it's a liberal arts school. So while you're getting a school management degree, you still have that liberal arts basis. Your general ed classes actually do matter and give you some interesting skills, and even in terms of how they influence your business courses. So I definitely felt well prepared for anything that I wanted to pursue. And one of the things I like about the field that I'm in is that I don't think I've ever worked with someone who set out to work in higher ed. Nobody said, gee, when I grow up, I want to be an admission director. But I think, they come from a lot of different industries and skills. And ultimately in the field of admissions, we're all salespeople. So, that's really kind of the core skill. It's people skills, it's whatnot. But being able to use my marketing skills, use my operations management background, use my IT background, it just gives me a lot of different exposure to. I feel like I could pretty much go anywhere.
Laura?
I'd like to just continue and echo what Jennifer and Michael have said. In my opinion, the business degree is well-rounded in itself. I mean, every industry has a business to run, whether they're trying to look at it, the marketing side of it or the financial. And I know for me with where I'm at in my field, I know that to me, it's kind of it's hard to think about, man, okay, if I were to want a specific industry, what would I want to go into? I could do nonprofit, construction, dealerships. I mean, the list is endless. So I think if you have an interest or a passion in a certain area, that there shouldn't be a problem for you to use your skills to dive into it.
Thank you. So we're about to wrap up, and I just wanted to ask you guys to give us some final advice for the viewers. If you want to go first, Jennifer.
I think one thing that I didn't think to touch on before, I noticed that there seems to be a lot of women in the panel today, which is great. Not just the panel, but I mean participants as well. And I think one thing that I learned later in life was that women are a lot less likely to apply for stretch jobs than men. And that was something that I certainly was true of me. I would never apply for a job if I didn't 100% think that I was qualified for it. And that's especially now something that you have to get out of your head, because the whole point of these really well-rounded skills and experiences that you're having as a UM-Flint student is to prepare you for things that you haven't been exposed to. So you don't have to already know how to do the job to be good at the job.
Thank you. Mike?
Just back to my opening comments, and we heard from all 3 of us that to be resilient and to not give up, and we are in challenging times, but we'll get through it. And you are well prepared. Think about what you have accomplished in your few years there at UM-Flint, and you're ready. Just trust yourself, have confidence in yourself, and go out there and take on the world, make it a better place.
Laura?
I 100% agree with that, Michael. I'd encourage the students to have confidence in yourself. As I mentioned before, don't be afraid of failure, and really remember that the only person that can limit what you're going to do in life is you. So just set your heart on what you'd like and go for it.
Great. Well, thank you panelists for participating today and giving us your insight. Appreciate it. Thank you to the viewers and all the questions that came through, and we're all done. So have a great day, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.